Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoy making this pie as much as I enjoy sharing it with you. Things you will need and helpful items: a 10-inch deep dish pie plate, a steamer pot and basket, an apple peeler, slicer, and corer is helpful, a rolling pin, a pastry cutter, aluminum foil, a pizza cutter is helpful, 2 sheets of full pan parchment paper, and a stapler is handy. The apple filling recipe contains 6 Rome apples, 1½ cups of sugar, 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 3/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 3 dashes of salt, and 3 tablespoons of butter cut into 6 pieces and set aside. Peel, core, and slice the apples. You can do it by hand, but I like this handy gadget. Cut the sliced apples into wedges and put in the strainer basket. Bring a small amount of water to a boil in the steamer pot and steam the apples for 4 minutes. Remove the apples and let drain. Next, mix 1½ cups of sugar, 1/2 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 3/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and 3 dashes of salt into a mixing bowl and stir. Add the apples, mix until well coated, and set aside. The pie crust contains 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 1 cup of shortening, and 6 tablespoons of cold water. Combine the flour and salt in a large mixing bowl. Add the shortening and blend in with a pastry cutter. Continue blending until the mixture resembles the shape of small peas. Add water into the center of the bowl and blend the mixture from the outside to the center until it is all moistened. Continue blending by hand until the dough can form a ball and cleans the sides of the bowl. Shape the dough into a ball, cut it in half, and cover one half with plastic wrap and set aside. Take the other half and place it in the center of a parchment sheet. Press it down in the shape of a circle, paying close attention to the outside of the circle. It will lightly stick to the paper. Here you can see just how much flexibility using the parchment gives you. Place the other sheet of parchment on top of the dough and press it down onto the dough so it makes a good contact all around. Roll the dough from the center to the edge with a rolling pin while rotating the parchment. Now you can roll from the center out to within an inch of the final width. Carefully separate the top sheet. Trim the edges so there are no cracks and dust with flour. Replace the top sheet. Flip the dough over and carefully remove the parchment sheet. Dust with flour and replace the parchment sheet. Because the dough will now move freely under the parchment, lightly roll it out to the final width of the paper. Carefully remove the top sheet and replace it. Flip the dough and carefully remove the parchment paper. Roll the dough onto the rolling pin. Unroll the dough onto the pie plate, avoiding pressure to the sides of the plate. Trim any excess crust with scissors or a knife. Preheat the oven to 425 degrees. Fill the pie from the center out, and then dot with the 6 pieces of butter. Roll out the top crust the same as the bottom crust and top the pie. Trim any excess crust. Sandwich the top and bottom crust and roll into a border around the pie. Shape the border by pinching it between the forefinger of one hand and the thumb and forefinger of the other hand. Cut 6 3-inch slits in the top to allow the steam to escape while baking. Place the pie on top of a measuring cup to elevate the bottom. Wrap the edges of the pie with foil. Place the pie in the center rack of the oven and bake at 425 degrees for 45 minutes. Remove the foil, rotate the pie, and bake for 10 minutes longer. Remove the pie to a cooling rack and allow to cool. I'd like to give a shout out to 3 special ladies who inspire, encourage, and challenge me. Thank you, Allison, Madison, and Megan. I love the new apron. Happy baking!